All right, friends, welcome back to the second half of our tutorial about interacting with Domo Jupyter workspaces. So in the first video, we really focused on authentication and extending the class objects using mixins and inheritance. That's where we started. And really the big deal, the whole reason that video exists is because interacting with Domo Jupyter APIs requires us to use new properties that we previously didn't have to worry about. So properties like the user token, service location, and service prefix. And the reason I started with extending the full auth class, which we did down here, the reason why I started with extending the full auth class with some new optional and required parameters was because I wanted to make sure that all of the stuff about hitting the right API is encapsulated in the same class, in the auth class. So questions like, what location are we going to? What Jupyter workspace are we trying to hit? What is the access token or user token necessary? All of that stuff should be encapsulated in the full auth class. And then I want the rest of my code, how do I hit the API? What do I send to the API? And what do I do with the response? I want that all handled in different code. So to that end, when we wrote the Domo library, we thought about dividing things into routes, which are just like the bare minimum, how do I hit the API? And then the class, which says, okay, you hit the API, now what do you want to do with it? So what does that look like? Getting data from Domo Jupyter is actually surprisingly simple. All I have to do is pass in a Domo auth object, in our case, the Domo Jupyter full auth. We're going to say, what do you want to hit? What path do you want to hit? Like what folder, subfolder, document? And then we will start by constructing our query. Notice the query is entirely constructed based off of stuff from the auth class. So Domo instance, service location, and prefix. And then, and only then, we start getting into, okay, what do you want to hit? What content path are we looking for? We're still using the getData function from Domo library. Why are we using getData? We're using getData because I know what the response is going to be every time, and I know how it's going to be shaped. We wrote a class called response getData that will return the response. It will return the status code, and also has in some built-in error handling just in case there's a hiccup in the APIs. So simple example of get Jupyter content. Let me restart my kernel and run all. Are we running? Yes, we're running. We talked about this already, so we'll leave that blank. It's going to flow through. Let's get to the part that I care about. Okay, we're getting Jupyter content. Here's my sample. Just passing in the auth object, API is equal to false. I don't want to debug it. Here's a response from the API. So it says, the part that I'm really interested in is this content node, and it has some fields, my terrible demo, which I believe was a document we created in the previous demo. I can see it is of type file. Currently, I can't see the content of that file, but I suspect if I set content path equal to, what is it called? My terrible demo.txt, my terrible demo. So now I can actually see the content of this file, including that the content of the file is hello world. Can I prove that that's true? Yes, I can. Okay, so I can get data, and by passing the contents path, I get slightly different content. Sure, that makes sense. Cool, that's get data. Easy. By the way, why are we excited? It means that if I need to download all of my stuff from Domo Jupyter and save it to GitHub, I can do that. If I need to download all of the stuff from Domo Jupyter and like upload it into another instance of Domo Jupyter, can't do that yet because I haven't talked about how to create documents. So let's look at that. So To create documents, I'm going to run update Jupyter content to, where is the function? The root is right here. So the function is called update Jupyter file. I pass in my Jupyter auth object. And here's where it gets interesting, right? I need to put something. So what am I putting? I'm putting some content at this location, at this service location, service prefix, and so on. I think I lied. I actually don't need to pass those parameters anymore because those parameters are handled in the auth object. So I'm going to delete that. Don't need that anymore. Okay. So what happens in here? First thing I need to check though is I need to check that I have an instance of Domo Jupyter full auth. If I don't have that, we can't move forward. So throw an exception. I have a function that's going to generate a properly formatted body. We'll look at that in a moment. But what are we going to do? We're going to take my content path, split it, and then what? Yes. We're going to, oh yeah, join that with forward slashes to construct my URL, where is the path of where the file needs to go to. And then again, I'm running get data. This all looks good. If it doesn't work, throw an exception. Okay, fine. I'm excited about that. Let's see if it works. Oh no, that definitely would not work. Maybe it does. It works. Oh, ye of little faith. Well, what I haven't talked about yet is how is this body constructed? That's the part that mentally threw me for a sec. We haven't talked about how we construct the body. So to construct a body, I throw in whatever content that I'm trying to put into a document and the path to get there. And you'll notice I have a separate function for generating the body, and I did that because I want one function just to handle, oh wait, hit the API with the body. What body? I don't know. You gave me a body. I hope it's formatted correctly. That's the job of my generate update Jupyter body function. This, like, separate concerns. One person's job is to hit the API. The other person's job is to build the body. So let's look at that. I used a variant of what I think is called the factory method, or factory design pattern. And the idea behind this design pattern is to, like, again, minimize how much code I'm writing so that I don't have a really complex, like, if statement when I'm trying to put all this together. So, I mean, I do have an if statement. So what does this look like? It says, if my content type is IPYNB, then my body will have parameters specific to getting a Jupyter notebook. If my content type is a directory, then my body will have parameters formatted specifically for returning a directory, and the default will be returning text. Okay, so what are we passing in? Well, I received your content, and I received the path to the content. And so that might be formatted something like this, where I say, what is the folder, and what is the name of the document? The name of the document is always going to be the last property, right? So if I take my contents path and split it on whatever the separator is, take the last one, and that's going to be the content name every time. Now, if there is if I'm just trying to pass a folder though, this is going to look slightly different. And so I'll have different rules for handling, okay, what do I do if it's a folder versus what do I do if it's a document? So if there's a full stop in the contents path, it's pretty reasonable to assume that this is a file. And I'm going to split on the full stop and take whatever is at the very end. And that will give me the file type. In this case, IPYNB, Markdown, TXT, whatever. If there is no full stop in the name, then it's safe to assume that I'm dealing with a directory. So content type equals directory. All right. So the base body will always have whatever the name of the content is, the stuff that I want to send, and the path to get there. Now, again, depending on if the content path is a file or a directory, it might be shaped slightly differently, but I want to handle that logic in the function that generates the Jupyter directory body. So let's look at that. Let's look at something basic. Let's assume that I got text. Well, then all I need to do is update the body with format is text and type is equal to file. Great. If it's a notebook, though, this is an API specific thing. It says, just kidding. The format should be none and the type should be notebook. Now, Domo might change the rules in a couple weeks. They might add new file types, like how do I handle images? I don't know. But I will eventually write a function for handling generating the body of an image and handling the content, right? Because the content is going to be like, what is it called when you send a string for an image? Base 64 encoding? Whatever that is, that's going to be handled someday in a function called generate .png, right? Or whatever the thing is. But my point is I want to separate these into separate functions, so the logic specific to dealing with a picture is separate from the logic for dealing with a notebook, and it's just really easy to find the stuff that I care about. Now, some of these functions will be trivially simple, but as I get into handling a Jupyter directory, right, we can see there's a little bit more code associated with that. And if I was handling an image, there would be even more code associated with that. But anyway, the whole idea behind this factory function is to, again, just separate my concerns into smaller pieces and make it simpler to generate the body, where all of the logic for handling the body is completely separate from all of the logic for handling hitting the actual API. That's a nugget at the end of the day. I'll post this code if you want. In any case, I have a folder called new folder. What if I added to it that I want a document called my great demo.txt, and the content is 201 response. So the document has been created. Let's see. In my folder called new folder, I have a new document called my great demo.txt. Jay is decent at demos. Lies. It worked the first time. Jay is excellent. What have we proved? We have proved that we can use our Domo Jupyter full auth class for interacting with routes. As we looked at routes versus classes, we said the job of the route should just be the bare minimum amount of effort necessary for interacting with the API. As we looked at the get data function, the get content function, what we're really excited to see is all of the stuff about interacting with a Domo Jupyter API is handled in the auth object, including generating the header. You don't have to deal with generating the header because generating the header is written into the auth class, and my get data class calls get header. So we don't have to worry about, oh, how does authorization handle? Not my problem. It's written into the get data class. And it's actually written into get auth header, which is defined earlier in the first tutorial. Long story short, you don't gotta worry about it. So don't worry about it. Then in the second half of this tutorial, we talked at length about working with what I described as a factory method or a factory design pattern, where I have a function that's solely responsible for generating the body. And because there are multiple types of body, directory, notebook, picture, markdown, text, I have a separate function for each of those. where all of the logic specific to handling a text body is in the text, which looked really simple, whereas in contrast, the logic for dealing with a directory was a little bit more intense. And the logic for handling getting an image would be even more intense. Or sorry, putting an image, updating an image would be more stuff to it. Anyway, so that's the end of this tutorial about using roots in Domo library. In our next tutorial, we're going to take a look at using classes based off of these roots to do more amazing things. So, back in a sec.